again, as I spoke about earlier, they're very interested in your specific work experience, what you've been doing over the past 3 to 5 years. Because as we all know, somebody coming hot off the press or out of the end of an apprenticeship is qualified, but nowhere near what you would deem to be skilled. You need 3 to 5 years of experience beyond that to be able to have had all of that exposure in the workplace to be deemed skilled. So they will look at that and award extra points for the longer that you've been working, up to a period of 4 years. If you have Australian qualifications, obviously, as I said, they look at your overseas qualifications, but they know that Australian industry puts a very, very high premium on Australian qualifications. If you have them, they will provide more points on that basis. An occupation in demand, we talked about the skilled occupations list. By the time I've finished, you'll have lists coming out your ears, there's so many of them. The next one we talk about is the MODL, or the Migration Occupation Demand List. So they have this great big long list of all the occupations that are in short supply. Then there's this list, the next one down, that are all these occupations that are deemed to be in really short supply. And if you're in one of those, more points towards your overall score in recognition of the fact that you're in that. If you've got a job offer in that occupation in Australia at the time that you apply, more points again. Okay? Spouse skills. If you are married or in a de facto relationship, if your spouse can meet those 3 criteria that we talked about in the first place, they can meet the age requirements, the skills requirements, and the English language requirements, then you can have them assessed as well and get more points again. There are state and territory sponsorships, and we'll talk about a bit more about those, that award points or give you concessions towards the point by gaining these state or territory sponsorships. And there are also designated area sponsorships. This one here, the state and territory sponsorship, it's based around yet another list. Out of the first list that we talked about, the skilled occupations list, all of the states are allowed to look at that list and say, okay, we will look at that list and decide which of those occupations we deem to be specifically in short supply in our state or territory. And they produce this list, and on the basis of that list, you can petition the state to nominate you because you've got one of those occupations. If you can do that, there are dispensations applied to you. Designated area sponsorship, we now go back to the whole family thing. If you've got family that can sponsor you in Australia, and they live in regional areas of Australia, because it's an underpinning agenda with the Immigration Department that they want to see areas that are regional as well as capital cities get the benefit of skilled migration as well, then if you're struggling to score points, if you've got family living in designated areas, there are really key specific concessions made in terms of the points you need to score based on you going into a regional or a designated area. Okay. Right now, the points, they work like this. For a skilled independent migrant, that means somebody that has got all the ticks in all the right boxes. They can score 120 points or more. They can apply for a visa that basically says, I can go wherever I want. No conditions apply. If you can't score the 120 points, then if you can gain state or territory sponsorship, then the bar drops and you only need to score 100 points. So you petition the state, you get them to sponsor you, it drops to 100 points. The flip side to that is, it's a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours situation. You agree to spend the first 24 months of your residence in Australia living and working in that state. So that's the payback. Okay? In the case of the designated area sponsorship, it becomes not a one-stage, but a two-stage visa process, and you get an initial temporary visa that allows you to go and live and work in a regional or designated area of Australia. After you've done that 2 years, you can then go on and go through the administrative process of applying for your permanent residence and go wherever you like. So that's the payback there. there's the state and territory sponsored. I've already explained that one to you. There is also another one, a state and territory regional sponsored. Shouldn't be confused with the designated area. The designated area talks about family sponsorship. This one here talks about state and territory sponsorship again. And I said to you, did I not, that there's a state list? Well, behind that there's another state list. And it's a state list of occupations that they don't necessarily really need to have, but they'd like to have. So if you're on that list, they'll sponsor you, and basically the deal is that they'll sponsor you because you're going to go and live for the first 2 years of your residence in a regional area of Australia. And it's a temporary visa for that period of time. Then, as is the other one, you can go on and go through the process of applying for your permanent residence. Okay? Again, with that one, it's state sponsorship, not family sponsorship. And again, the bar drops. You only need to be able to score 100 points. With the designated family sponsorship, you only need to be able to score 75 points. It's a huge dispensation, okay, that provide you for going to having family in a regional area and electing to go. The regional sponsored migration scheme and the employer nomination scheme, they are hot items at the moment in terms of demand because they have an extremely high processing priority. We'll talk about it in a moment. Basically, under the regional sponsored migration scheme, you are getting an employer in a regional area of Australia to agree to sponsor you, i.e. give you a job. Basically, he agrees to sponsor you, you take the sponsorship, the payback is you're working for him for the first 2 years of your residence. If he goes belly up, you're off the hook. If you just bail and say, I don't want to do this anymore, much as it doesn't happen all that often necessarily, the Immigration Department has the latitude to be able to revoke your visa. Okay. Big one about that, age waiver. Age waiver, big one. Okay? 45 was the cut-off age. You must be no older than 44 years and 364 days as at the day your application is lodged. With this one here, the Immigration Department have the discretion to provide age waivers. You can be over 45 years of age and get through. Unspoken rule of thumb, further you are past 45, further bush you go to get them. Okay? And no jokes about that, that's a fact. Lady in Alice Springs, a nurse, 66 years of age. She took a job in Alice Springs that nobody else would take. Proved like that. 24 hours, get it. They could not get nurses to go to Alice Springs. 66. Okay? But the general rule of thumb is, further you are past that age group, you're going further out somewhere. But it's there and it's an age dispensation available on that basis. The employer nomination scheme is not that different to the RSMS. It is convincing an employer here, convincing an employer in Australia to sponsor you into a position that they have identified as needing to be filled in that industry where they cannot get somebody from within the existing labour force to take the job. Again, in this case, under E&S, it's permanent residence as at the date that you arrive. Okay? The one difference between the two, you asked the difference between the two. I don't want to go into too much technical detail because it would confuse more than it would really clarify. The conditions and the requirements that you go through to get this one are greater than they are to get this one, particularly based around skills initially, in many cases. Okay? But this one, you can get that anywhere, it does not have to be regional. Are we all okay with that? Any questions at all, sort of based around the skilled migration? Before we go on and we talk about all the other things, just to confuse. Is there anything at all there that anybody has any questions about?
I would like to believe if the company that sponsored you on a 457, if for any reason they have to lay you off, that's it, you're back on a plane in 28 days. Is that true?
Yeah, we haven't got to 457 yet. RSMS and employer, none of these are 457. We're going to be going on to that in a minute. Yep. These are permanent residents. The temporary one we'll talk about in a moment. No questions?